Hey everybody, it is You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and this week, my first question comes from Troubleshooter125, who says, Steve, like you, I grew up with Bugs Bunny and the products of Termite Terrace. I got to the point where I noticed the copyright dates of the cartoons and learned very quickly that the really quality stuff was dated in the early to mid 40s, the war years, and while I didn't get all the war humor back then, I still thought this stuff was hilarious. All that said, question, what's your favorite Warner Brothers cartoon of that era? And while we're at it, who of the heavies of that time is your favorite director? Friz Frayling, Chuck Jones, my two faves, Bob McKimson, or Tex Avery? I actually had to look up some titles because my two favorites of the Looney Tunes or Merry Melodies series that always come like immediately to mind are actually from later than the 1940s era that you're talking about in your question. My two go-to favorites are Duck Amuck and What's Opera Doc, which are also, they're easy choices. Those are two of the most popular ones that everybody sort of knows. But they're both from the 50s. From the 40s, that's when like all of those early Bugs and Elmer cartoons were made, and those were actually, when you look up the filmographies, they were relatively evenly distributed among the big directors. Chuck Jones directed a bunch of them, Friz Freleng directed a bunch of them, Bob Clampett directed a bunch of them. So as much as I prefer and really admire, especially Chuck Jones, all of those guys were doing just tremendous work. And it's interesting that those, I agree with you, I do think the stronger work was in the 40s during the war years. But for whatever reason, those cartoons, unless you look them up or you sit down and watch them, at least for me, I mean, maybe it's different for you, but for me, they all tend to sort of blend together. You know, I have images of, you know, the classic Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd cartoon, the sort of archetypal cartoon where Elmer's sort of, you know, marching through the woods with his gun and Bugs is in his rabbit hole, just like, which is just like a plain circular hole in the flat forest floor, and he just sort of comes out and, you know, poking his fingers into the barrel of the gun, that sort of thing. I remember the tropes. I remember the moments and the individual jokes and the images more so than I remember the individual episodes, the individual films. Which in a way is too bad, but in another way sort of just speaks to how universal and how appealing they are. And also how young I was when I first discovered them. And how, I mean, a lot of them I probably haven't watched since I was a kid. Because the other thing you realize when you look up the filmography, as I did before I sat down to answer your question, is just how damn many of these shorts there were. They made so many of these Looney Tunes and Merry Melody shorts from the 30s up through the 50s and 60s. There are just so many of them. And they do, with a few exceptions, which for me I would say would be Duck Amuck and What's Opera Doc, the ones that I can remember by title and pick out and think of as separate things. They sort of blend together into just this general soup of animated awesomeness. Arte1090, hey Steve, I'm personally a huge Kevin Smith fan. Do you have an opinion of him from a film point of view? There's a really excellent article about Kevin Smith that was published last week on the website Movie Mezzanine, and it's co-written by Sean Burns and Jake Mulligan, who are a pair of film critics, and it's a conversation between them about Kevin Smith, and it's called We Need to Talk About Kevin Smith. And it's a really excellent article, and it echoes very much my own feelings about Kevin Smith. People my age, I'm in my mid-30s, I'm 34, people my age who are movie people, especially white men who are movie people, we have an affection for Kevin Smith. A lot of us do. And it's a problem when you think about it, because to me, the unavoidable truth is that Kevin Smith is not really all that good. He has moments of brilliance. He has moments in his writing, especially, of just really wonderfully funny things and really insightful, moving things. He has a wonderful sense of, he has a great, at his best, he has a great earnestness and sincerity that I really appreciate that a lot of filmmakers, especially from around his age group, really lack. Everybody's so steeped in irony and cynicism, and Kevin Smith, at his best, avoids a lot of that, and is willing to sort of bare his soul and wear his heart on his sleeve as a filmmaker, which I appreciate. And I've really enjoyed some of his films. I still really, really like Clerks. I really like Chasing Amy. I really like Dogma. I thought Red State was very impressive, especially when viewed as a Kevin Smith film. But a lot of his other work, I just don't like. I didn't think Mallrats was all that great, even though I have a soft spot for it. I have to admit, I don't think it's a good movie. I thought Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was horrible, was just absolutely horrible, was a shining example of why fan service is usually a bad idea. Again, highly, if you care about Kevin Smith and you want to hear like a critical view of Kevin Smith's work from people like me who have followed his work and like him and want to like his work but also view it through a critical eye, check out that article. We need to talk about Kevin Smith on Movie Mezzanine. Very highly recommended. Starcrafter 13 Terran. Hi Steve, I have another question and I need an atheist to answer, so this is perfect. I have no problem with death. It happens, but I am having a problem dealing with the concept of oblivion. The most likely result of death, to me, is blackness, no passage of time, I cease to be. The idea that my conscious self no longer exists bothers me a lot. I suspect that is the fear that causes others to flock to religion. Anyway, how do you come to grips with the concept that the thinking you just ends? It seems a shame to me, not only for myself, but for every pet, friend, family member, and great person that has graced this planet, you included. Thanks again. It seems a shame to me too. It is a huge bummer. It's something that it bothers me too. It's my greatest fear. It's something that I don't know if I really truly have reconciled myself to it. I have as much as I'm capable of doing. I mean, I just, look, you want to know bluntly how I deal with it? I tell myself there's nothing to be done about it. It is just a part of the nature of our existence. And then I think about something else. That's the best I can tell you. I accept it intellectually. I accept it philosophically. I know that it's just a part of life. I know that this happens to everybody, and I am no different. And how arrogant would I be? How selfish and demanding would I be to not only expect, but to insist somehow that my life should go on forever? You know, how childish would that be? To look at all that I have in my life and all the wonderful things that I am privileged to be able to see and learn and experience, and to get 70, 80 years of that if I'm lucky, and then to say, not enough, I want more, you know? There's something to be said for that point of view too. How much more do you want? But at the same time, that doesn't, I'm still afraid of it, and I still wish that it could be some other way. You know, and I don't think there's anything to be done about it, other than accept it as best you can as a natural part of life and think about something else. Miss JJ. Steve, I have a question on feminism/feminists. I am all for equality, but I don't like to label myself as a feminist because it seems to have been appropriated by some women as a form of spewing hate against men or women who choose what they consider traditional roles, such as being stay-at-home mothers. I think they do a huge disservice to feminism as a whole. What are your views on that, and have you any ideas on how real feminists could go about dealing with it so that the automatic response from some when they hear the term feminist would not be man-hater who wants women to be treated as superiors? All the best, and keep up the good work. Part of the solution, I think, Miss JJ, is for people like you to not run from the label. Because, as you suggested in your question, Ms. JJ, feminism at its most basic and its most universal is just gender equality. Is just the idea that men and women should be treated equally and have equal opportunities and have equal freedom to pursue their lives as they see fit, regardless of their gender. Ultimately, that's what feminism is at its broadest interpretation. That's what feminism is. And there are narrower interpretations within it. There are some people who are more radical. There are some people who do have a more hostile attitude toward men than other feminists. But at the root of it, it's all about gender equality. And that's something that I support unequivocally and without apology. And I call myself a feminist because I support that, and I call myself a feminist. I don't say, well, feminism, that's too radical. I mean, it used to be something nice, but I don't, no. I'm a feminist. I support gender equality. I am a feminist. I'm not an egalitarian. I'm not a humanist. I could be described with those terms, yes, but in terms of gender equality, I don't choose those labels. I choose feminist. And if you feel that feminism has been unfairly tarred as being anti-male or female superiority or being too angry or too bitter, I would suggest one of the things that would help would be for people like you to own the label. To say, yes, people like that are feminists, but people like me are feminists too. Miami Roach, what do you tell a kid who's about to get kicked out of his home and who thinks he can become a professional video game player? The kid in question has zero job or life skills to survive in the real world. He's 17, but has the maturity of a 10-year-old. School seems out of the question at this point for him. It's not that he's dumb, but his video gaming addiction trumps everything else in his life. I even doubt he can hold down a job. Do you think someone like that can survive in the real world? I'm worried, really worried for him. I try to show that I care, I give him advice when I can, but he tells me to mind my own business. Help. I wish I had advice for you. I wish I were in any way competent to to advise you on this. I remember being that age, and I remember sort of feeling like you described the 17-year-old being, not having any clue what I was going to do with my life. I remember having conflict with my parents over not having a job after high school, being at a point where if I didn't get a job, that my dad said he was going to kick me out of the house. I remember, being in that situation as a young person. And I remember taking a long time as an adult to figure out what I wanted to do, what I was good at, what I could do, And honestly, if the YouTube thing hadn't taken off, I don't know what I would be doing, to be honest. So I can relate to that 17-year-old kid. And can someone like him make it in the real world? I don't know. Becoming a professional video game player, at first blush, sounds insane. I mean, can someone like him make it in the world? Yes. Will he? I don't know. Hopefully. I feel like I want to say probably not. I mean, I don't want to say it. I don't want that to be true, but I feel like that the odds are probably not that good. And I don't know. As for what you're supposed to do, I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm not a parent. I'm not a kid anymore. I remember really, really, really resenting my father at the time when he forced me to go out and do something. Looking back, I think it was a good thing. I don't think he could have done anything else as a parent. I think he was acting in what he felt was my best interest. But I don't know. I have no idea. And I'm sure this was no help to you at all. But if it does help, if it's any help to know that I understand and I feel for you and I feel for this 17-year-old kid, believe me, I do. Believe me, I do. But as far as practical advice, I'm afraid I've got nothing for you. Joseph Fapiano. Hey Steve, it was while watching your 5 Stupid Things About Prayer video that I finally decided I was an atheist. Of course, there were tons of other factors leading into it, but that was the moment. Anyway, when you make videos pertaining to religion, what's your ultimate goal? Is it to talk some sense into people, or just provide entertainment? The number one reason is very self-centered, I'm afraid, and it's just to get my position, my opinion, my feelings out there. That's really the number one motive behind all of my YouTube stuff, is I have something I want to share, be it an opinion, be it something funny, be it a little skit, whatever, and I'm putting it out there. But yeah, I mean, entertainment is a part of it. I hope that my work is entertaining to people. I hope that it's not dry and difficult to get through. I hope that people get some enjoyment from it. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it is also, when I talk about things, when I express opinions on things, especially when I'm talking about atheism and theism and religion, and I mean, look, I think I've got it right. I mean, I mean, I think my position is the most reasonable one. Otherwise, I would hold a different position. And I try to articulate that position. And when I articulate that position and people write to me or leave comments and say that they enjoyed it or that it meant something to them or they found it useful or insightful or like you, that it maybe was part of a whole group of factors that led them to, turn from religion toward atheism, that makes me feel good. I feel like that's a good thing. I feel like that's an accomplishment. And of course, it would be dishonest of me to say that that's not, at least in part, something that I have in mind when I'm writing these things, when I'm talking about these things. Yeah, of course. But the number one reason behind any of it is just the very basic impulse to share my thoughts, to represent my position, to articulate what I'm thinking and why. That's the number one motive. John Henderson. Hey Steve, thank you for being a vocal ally to feminism. It's also pretty awesome that you're a wrestling fan, as am I. I have been wondering if you feel that it's possible to continue to be an ally to the cause of feminism and be a fan of wrestling. Clearly, wrestling is disgustingly misogynistic. I don't know about you, but when I watch the Divas division, I get a tad nauseous. Should allies of the feminist movement support things like this? I don't blame feminists for not supporting it for those reasons. I think you're right. It is misogynistic. It is sexist. It does have a very demeaning, condescending attitude toward women. It's also, I think, still, unfortunately, very homophobic. I think in many ways it is racist, although I don't think it's intentionally racist. And I think increasingly it's not even intentionally homophobic. It just is casual and ingrained and sort of implicit. Doesn't mean it's not a problem, doesn't mean it doesn't have to be addressed and rooted out and spoken out against, but it's not as overt as it once was. But there are lots of other art forms, and maybe I'm being generous by calling pro wrestling an art form, but there are lots of other art forms that have similar problems. There's no such thing as an art form that is morally perfect, and I can either abandon pro wrestling for that reason. I can either say, you know what, it's too sexist, it's too homophobic, it's too whatever, and I'm just not going to watch it. I can do that. And again, people who do that, I respect that. I don't think you're being unfair. I think that's a perfectly valid response. I can either do that, or I can stick with it, and I can enjoy the parts of it that I do like. I can enjoy the parts of it that don't trouble me. The athleticism, a well-cut promo, a well-worked, well-laid-out match, a really nicely booked feud, a nicely booked storyline between two guys. I can enjoy those things that I do enjoy when I see them and they're done well. And I can speak up and raise my voice as a member of the wrestling fan community and try to drag the audience and the product in what I feel is the right direction. But I completely relate to your feeling here. As a wrestling fan, I am troubled by those things. I'm troubled by the presentation of women in wrestling. I'm troubled by the attitude in wrestling towards a lot of things. I see it moving in a positive direction, but it's still there, and it's still a problem, and it still bothers me. And there are still times when I feel like a heretic for watching wrestling while being like this liberal-minded, progressive person. There are times when I wonder if I'm about to be struck by lightning for watching. And then there are times when I feel like I might be struck by lightning again for the multitude of really lame-ass segues that I have employed in order to get from this section of the video to
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Radical Bacon. Hey Steve, I'm in the last month of my 20s. Is there anything I should do before I turn 30? I can't think of anything. Actually, I don't think 30 is even that big of a deal. I think the major threshold age for people our age is not 30, but is 35, which is my next birthday, because when you turn 35, you leave that coveted 18 to 34 demographic of advertisers, and that's when popular culture just fucking no longer gives a shit about you. So that's the real transitional age, not 30. Guagle. I think that's how that's pronounced. Guagle, Geigel, Google. Anyway, squash. Do you mean summer or winter squash? This is very important. I meant summer squash was one of my favorite vegetables. Summer squash, particularly yellow squash or zucchini. John 0387. Why would you watch Death Proof? I almost walked out of the theater on that piece of shit. Please tell me you don't also enjoy Planet Terror. Yes, unfortunately, I have to tell you I do also enjoy Planet Terror. But I don't enjoy it nearly as much as I enjoy Death Proof. I love Death Proof. It is so funny. It's just a great fucking movie. I love Death. It's one of Tarantino's hidden treasures, I think. I love, love, love Death Proof. Louis Ang 114. When Stuffy goes to the bathroom, does he use the bathroom or the backyard? He uses the bathroom, but as to how he is able to wipe with those little arms, I have no idea. That will remain a mystery for the ages. Kamikaze Sasquatch. Steve, as someone who hasn't trimmed his facial hair in 1.5 years, I am curious as to what the record length of your beard is. Why do you prefer it shorter? I've found that a long beard really isn't that much different than a short beard, other than maybe taking a bit longer to groom and removing the need for a scarf in the winter. It's never been that long. It's never been a whole lot longer than it typically is in these videos. Maybe a little shaggy or a little bushier every now and then, but I generally keep it about this length. And it's purely for egotistical vanity reasons. I just think it looks better that way. I just don't want to have a big, long, Grizzly Adams, Bruiser Brody beard. There's a wrestling reference for you. I just don't want to have a big, long beard like that. I like having it nice and trim. Easier to manage, too. Easier to wash, that sort of shit. McKenna McLaughlin, what are your thoughts on the possibilities of extraterrestrial or even ultra-terrestrial life out there? Do you think it's a possibility, or are you waiting for more evidence to come in before even considering thinking about it? Well, I think the evidence would come into play if I were to think that it actually was literally out there. I think the possibility is definitely there. I mean, I think as big as the universe is, as many stars as there are, as many planets as we are continually discovering. I mean, one of the most exciting things about modern astronomy is in the last 15 or 20 years we've discovered that planets, once thought to be incredibly rare, are actually abundant. And even planets that are about the same size as Earth and in the so-called Goldilocks zone orbiting around their stars, where they could maintain liquid water and possibly host life not unlike our own. These things are not rare in the universe. So of course I think it's a possibility that there's extraterrestrial life, perhaps even intelligent extraterrestrial life out there. It's a very enticing, intriguing, fascinating possibility. I know of no particular instance. I don't think that aliens have visited us. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a possibility. I definitely think it's a possibility. Hugh Jass. This last year, I've been brushing up on my math skills to hopefully pursue a STEM degree in college. I was wondering how good you are at math. What's the highest level of math you've gotten to? Do you enjoy doing it? No, I'm terrible at math. The highest level in math I ever got to, I maybe Algebra 2 in college, like whatever the minimum in my college degree was. I think it was Algebra 2 was the most I had to take to get the math requirement. That was hard. I'm just so fucking terrible at math. And it's so terrible, in fact, that people who are good at math are the people I truly consider to be intelligent. Like math smart people are the people I look at and think, wow, they're really smart. They're not like this kind of smart, like bullshit sort of talk a good game kind of smart. If you know math, you're really, really smart in my eyes, because I'm fucking terrible at it. Delightful E. For the lightning round, hey Steve, I'm a regular watcher. Would you ever consider going vegan? And if not, why? P.S. Bet $5 you won't read this one. Well, I will expect payment on that $5 because I totally read it. Yeah, I would consider going vegan. I mean, I don't think I'm going to do it anytime soon because I'm too much of a hedonist when it comes to food. But I have no objection to veganism. I think it's probably a much healthier diet than the one I have. I mean, I would definitely consider it. But no plans to make the transition right now. ZZZ Giant Awake. Lightning round. Was Stuffy something that you made up for this channel? Or was Stuffy something that you've been doing for a while that caused family members to roll their eyes? Stuffy has been with me for a very long time, both the actual physical dog and his voice and his personality. It's something that I've been doing for a long time, long before I put him in a video. My wife and I have cracked each other up doing stuffed animal voices as long as we've been together. Stuffy and Toby Benson and Jack McPherson and Millicent and the animals that we use on the Steve and Stuffy videos. Their personalities all predate their appearances in the videos. And it's a drive your wife or your husband crazy kind of thing. Finite Atticus. Hey Steve, did I forget to say thanks for plugging my podcast with Jason? I'm an asshole, huh? Well, better late than never. Thanks, Steve. And question for the lightning round. Did you ever find Bugs Bunny attractive when he dressed up as a girl bunny? Atticus. Not as attractive as I find you, my friend. And you don't even have to dress up like a lady. I just think you're a handsome dude. I know you're probably sick of hearing it. But it's true. Sleepy Eye Guy. When are we going to see another Atheist Reads? I'm jonesing. Well, it'll be January. The next Atheist Read series will start in January, probably the first Thursday in January. And I haven't made any definite decisions on what book it will be, but it's probably at this point going to be God's Not Dead by Rice Brooks, I think is the author's name. The book that was sort of kind of the basis for the Kevin Sorbo movie. I think that's the one I'm going to do first, God's Not Dead. So there you go. That's it for the lightning round, everybody. Before I get out of here, I want to do a shout out, as always. And the shout out this week goes to Sketches in My Flat, which is the YouTube channel of Gemma Arrowsmith. Sketches in My Flat, not only the title of the channel, but also of the series that is the main feature of the channel. And it's exactly how it sounds. It's a series of short one-person comedy sketches written and filmed and performed in Gemma's apartment by her. And they are so funny. She is a writer and a comic and an actress and a performer, just brilliant, just incredibly funny, incredibly smart and sharp, and just really, really quality stuff. And I saw her channel at first when I discovered it a couple of months ago, and I thought, how the hell does this person not have just a massive, massive YouTube audience? For whatever reason, she doesn't. So hopefully I can send a few of you guys her way, and you will enjoy her work as much as I have, because I think it is just tremendous. Highly, highly, highly recommended. Gemma Arrowsmith, Sketches in My Flat. Go check it out and subscribe if you like it as much as I do. Well, before I get out of here, I actually have a sort of a sub shout out, an additional shout out. It doesn't really count because it's a shout out to myself. I wanted to tell you guys that this weekend, this Sunday actually, beginning at noon Eastern and ongoing for about an hour, I'm going to do my first hangout for my Patreon patrons. The way it works is all of you can watch it. It will be publicly broadcast on my channel and then archived for anybody to watch whenever they want, on demand, whenever. Everybody gets to watch it. But if you are a Patreon patron, before the show starts, you can go to my Patreon page and you can find a link to join me in the hangout. You can come on the air with me and we will hang out together for an hour or so. Me and you and all of the other Patreon patrons of mine who want to participate, that we can cram into that Google Hangout. And we can talk about anything. I mean, we can do Q&A, we can talk about whatever's on your mind, we can pass the time in whatever way is the most entertaining and fun for you guys who join me in the Hangout. It's going to be a lot of fun. I really hope that some of you guys will join me. If you want to get in on the fun and you are not a Patreon patron of mine and you want to join me in the Hangout and talk to me on the air, all you have to do is join my Patreon campaign. You can go to my Patreon page and for as little as $1 a month, you can become a Patreon patron and financially support this channel. And once a month, you will be able to join me for these live special Hangouts. I'm going to do these monthly from now on. Hangouts with my Patreon patrons. Viewable for everybody, but only the patrons get to join in the fun and participate in the actual Hangout. So consider that. That's it for this time, everybody. I will be back again next week to do this all over again, provided, of course, that you guys ask me some questions, because in order for this to work, you have to ask. So please leave a comment on this video, leaving me your question for next time. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. So that is it for this week. I will see you guys again next week. Until then, take care, everybody.